Farida. Bas, it worked. Good morning, everyone. Can I please ask you to take your seats so we can start on time? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. My name is Ghada Houeidi. I'm the Associate Dean for Executive Education at the AUC School of Business. Welcome to the second day of the AUC Business Forum. I'm delighted to see a lot of familiar faces around the table, and a special welcome to our friends and participants who traveled from abroad, from the UK, from the US, and from Greece, to be joining us today. Today's topic is micro-credentials. At the face of it, we might know what it means. When we dig a bit deeper, we might find out that we actually don't agree on what it is. We have been researching micro-credentials in higher education and executive education for some time, in order to put a plan for what AUC can do in this space. And given our precedents as AUC within the wider Egyptian higher education ecosystem, some of the things AUC initiates and starts become mainstream nationwide. So this is an important conversation for what we do as AUC, and how we look at micro-credentials in lifelong learning and higher education in Egypt more generally. When doing our research, we have found a variation from countries that have had national systems for micro-credentials, like Ireland, for example, where the Association of Universities developed a framework, a national framework for micro-credentials across different areas. To individual universities in the US who say we're not going to touch this, this is a new fashion and it will go away. And everything in between. That's the whole range. So who's offering them? What are they? How do universities deal with this? Are they valued by corporates? Are they valued by learners? Are they actually going to replace traditional education as we know it, or they're going to complement it? These are some of the issues that we are going to raise today, and you have in the program the bios of our distinguished speakers, so I will get to that in a short while. I will not use buzzers and timing and all of that. We'll let the conversation flow, but I will ask people to be brief so we can hear from everyone. And I'll just give the floor to Dr. Sharif Kamel, the Dean of the School of Business, to give introductory remarks, and then we'll start with the speakers.
Thank you very much, Ghada, and good morning, everybody. Sabah al-khair, and for our visitors, welcome to campus and welcome to Egypt. You would realize there are a few people who are not yet here, because those of us coming from the other side of town, it took me 2 hours and 15 minutes, so there is a bit of an accident on the road, so probably they'll be joining us soon. Ghada went straight into the business. I'll just step back for 1 minute and just give you a 40,000 feet overview on why do we do the forum. This is the 4th edition of the forum. We do it every February, and the precise objective of the forum is to inform us of the development taking place in the areas that we pick and choose every year to focus on. So we had our first in 2020. This is our fourth, and it started off yesterday with 2 roundtables on sustainable finance, and then the second was on family business. You would realize that all our roundtables focus on the priority areas that we think are important to our students, to the future leaders, policymakers, entrepreneurs, change agents, that we try to contribute through their knowledge, through their contribution to society. Obviously, today's first roundtable, as Ghada alluded to, is very important to us because it addresses an area that is of growing importance, has been around for many, many, many years, but then it's shaping up to take center stage in the shaping of future leaders. But also it relates to one of our flagship operations that has been around actually even preceding some of our degree programs, which is the area of executive education. We end the day today with another session on case studies and its importance as a pedagogical approach. And then tomorrow, one of probably the talk of each and every business school around the world, not just business school, but higher education at large, which is the social impact of business schools. We're looking at SDGs and how to integrate them, really integrate them into the curriculum. So for this morning's roundtable, we look forward to your input, your contribution. Definitely the discussions, as Ghada alluded to. This is, again, extremely important for us because it informs the way we shape our programs, our research, and our activities. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Sharif. And to start us off, it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Angus Lang, Executive Dean of Edinburgh Business School and the School of Social Science at Heriot-Watt University in the UK. Heriot-Watt have been our partners for over a decade now. We are offering the Heriot-Watt MBA as AUC Executive Education, and we've recently concluded an agreement where our healthcare management specialization will be part of the Heriot-Watt MBA. So we're delighted with this partnership and delighted that Angus is visiting.
Ghada, thank you for the warm welcome, and it's a genuine pleasure to be here. This is an absolutely critical issue that we all confront when we're running universities, and I apologize. I'm going to talk about this from a university perspective because I think it does pose us a set of significant challenges that we need to address around the type of infrastructure that we have in universities. Indeed, you could ask a question as to whether it changes some of the fundamental dynamics of the university. Are we simply a producer of knowledge that we then disseminate, or are we actually, is our key role to be an aggregator of knowledge that comes from various sources and bundles that together? So there's an element here where I think some of the literature that we're familiar with around service bundling and unbundling comes in. But before I get there, before I get into some of what I think are the important mechanics, I want to offer a very personal reflection. I've been at Heriot-Watt now, Edinburgh Business School, for 5 months. One of the things that attracted me there was a very, very distinctive business model that we've got. We run an online global MBA that people can start at any point in the year. It's entirely, sorry, my apologies. It's entirely asynchronous. As I said, you can start it at any point in the year. It's a stackable model of modules, and we have 10,000 active learners on that at any one time. Of those, a quarter come from sub-Saharan Africa. So we're in an opportunity to reach into areas that many other business schools struggle to reach into. But we're only able to do that because of far-sighted investment that the university made in the type of back-office infrastructure that we need to be able to deliver that. I don't mean the technology infrastructure. The technology infrastructure is relatively easy. It's the infrastructure around registration, around quality assurance, around student management, the handling of the student experiences. In other words, it's the non-sexy, it's the unseen elements that the university invested very, very heavily in over a number of decades that gives us the opportunity to do that. And this positions us, certainly within a UK context and arguably within a European context, in quite a distinctive position. I contrast that with my prior experience at Lancaster University in the UK, Lancaster University Management School, where we did nothing online, and the conversations with the university about trying to move online got completely bogged down in whether our student registration systems and the such like were in a position to cope with flexible models of delivery. Could we cope with admitting students more than twice a year? Did our systems cope with that? The answer was no. So this comes back to a fundamental issue, I think, if universities are going to be serious about micro-credentials, and let's come on in a second to explore what we mean by those, but we've got to be clear that this requires significant investment in infrastructure from the university if they are going to treat it seriously. Because there's an increasing volume of literature, body of knowledge that suggests that individual micro-credentials are not particularly lucrative, they're not particularly attractive financially for business schools. They become attractive if you can start to stack them, you can start to turn them into qualifications where we have longer-term relationships with the companies. So there's a real set of issues there that we need to address, because our conventional business model, the model that most of us have come from, even those schools that have got a history of doing executive education, is around longer-term qualifications. We are now dealing with very, very short-term, bite-size pieces. And if I reflect on the experience of the Edinburgh Business School MBA, we get approximately 25%, between 25 and 30% of our students progressing from when they've taken a first module, which they can sign up standalone. They're not signing up for the MBA, they're signing up for a module, so it's a classic stackable model. Just over a quarter of those will actually end up completing the MBA. And we have to do a very, very significant amount of work to make sure those students actually continue and see their way through. So whether it's from a university point of view or from a corporate client point of view, if people sign up for a single module, there is a single micro-credential, there is an awful lot of work that needs to be done in terms of shepherding the learner through a journey. So there's a real challenge there. Second area of challenge I think we face is that in universities we're very focused, as we should be, on designing a learning journey for the students. It's not simply what you learn within the individual module, it's about the combination of modules that you take. Where you've got micro-credentials, where you've got standalone modules that students can take whenever they want in any order they want, how do you actually build that learning journey? What do you do in terms of putting a wraparound to give coherence to those offerings? And that's fine. At the moment, we're just talking about micro-credentials, we're just talking about short qualifications that are delivered by one university. What happens when you want to look at qualifications, micro-credentials, coming from other universities, coming from corporates? How do we bundle those together? Do we have the skill sets in universities around the accreditation of prior learning? Certainly in the UK, the answer would be no. Even scarcer, even rarer, do we have the expertise, do we have the skills in the accreditation of prior experiential learning? So we've got our typical learner coming on to our MBA program. The typical learner picking up micro-credentials will have significant work experience. How do we capture that work experience? Can we accredit that work experience? How can we credit the corporate learning the corporate courses that they have undertaken? This is pushing a university quality assurance system to the very limits, because the quality assurance system is designed that we produce the knowledge, we deliver the learning. This is, as I said at the outset, unbundling. We're dealing with other organizations bringing their knowledge forward. How do we go and verify that? How do we put our quality stamp on that? This is real fundamental issues that we need to get if our corporate clients are to trust the qualifications that we are producing. So how we work with corporate partners is an increasingly significant issue. So let me give you an example. We're currently working with Tata Consulting Services around developing a set of micro-credentials in cybersecurity. Their clients have a desperate need for understanding cybersecurity, partly from a tech point of view, but actually, let's be honest, the real challenges facing most organizations in the cyber territory are less about the technology and more about the people, and more about the leadership of the organization, and seeing that cyber risk is recognized as a critical issue. So we're working with them. Why are we working with them? Arguably, we've got the bandwidth within the university, both in terms of the tech knowledge and the leadership and management knowledge to deliver something like this. It's because, as universities, we are relatively small. Can we reach out to a massive client base? Probably quite difficult to do the reach. We ourselves need aggregator companies to help us reach out to a very often a fragmented market. But perhaps more importantly, one thing I never really had thought about until we embarked on this journey with Tata was companies have different corporate learning systems. How do we plug into their corporate learning systems? We need, as a university, we are a relatively small organization. How do we have the capabilities to actually connect appropriately into their corporate learning systems? So there's a real set of challenges, but I continue to believe that this needs to be the future of business schools. We've been through an evolution of business schools. If you look in the US, you look in the UK, the two contexts I'm most familiar with. The 50s, the 60s, business schools were very much driven to address the challenges of dealing with the post-Second World War economies, the large corporates. In Britain, there was a particular push around dealing with productivity challenges. We still have those challenges today. The role of business schools is not just to educate the career starters, but it is to educate the career developers, the career shifters at different stages in their lives. Lifelong learning has always been there, sitting in the backdrop of what we do, but we have become focused as part of the academy on the conventional initial qualifications. Yes, we do the postgraduate qualifications. Yes, we do the conventional MBA, but we have not really placed center stage that lifelong learning for people in work. We're in the process at Edinburgh Business School of establishing an institute for work-based learning to address many of the pedagogical issues that one encounters in this territory. But we're only able to do that because we have the backing of the university to invest in that infrastructure that I talked about at the outset. So I just, in a sense, want to leave you with the thought that a bit like remote working, we talked about remote working for years. I've been an academic now, I used to say 2 decades, now I realize it's 3 decades. Time flies when you're having fun. But over those 3 decades, I can still remember us talking about, oh, it was always going to be remote working. This was going to be the solution for rural marginalized economies. It's only now, in the aftermath of a pandemic, that we've really actually got there. I can't help feeling there is something similar on the horizon for us with micro-credentials. And of course, I haven't addressed the question, what on earth do we mean by micro-credentials? It's a word that we throw out there, we use somewhat sloppily, but let's leave it as small, bite-sized pieces of learning for people in work that can be connected together into some shape of qualification. I genuinely believe that for many institutions, not all institutions, not all business schools, this will reflect the future. And I think Sharif made the comment that AUC almost had started with executive education. I look at Edinburgh Business School and Heriot-Watt University. Heriot-Watt University was established in 1821 as the original Mechanics Institute in Edinburgh to train people in the earlier days of the Industrial Revolution in the skills that they needed when they were in work. The Edinburgh Business School was set up around the online MBA, again, dealing with people in work. There is no question that for my university, micro-credentials, lifelong learning are central. That's why we're investing in the infrastructure. Our other university in Edinburgh, the University of Edinburgh, yes, the one that's at the top of all the global league, up in the top end of all the global league tables, is not suited for this. It's a different mission. It's a different purpose. So my final message is that as universities, as business schools, if we're going to do this, we need to see it as strategically core to what we do, because there is investment required to make this happen. Great, thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Angus. So this is, I think, the first applause. Was there applause in the roundtables yesterday? So this is a first. Thank you, Angus. Very, very important and thought-provoking comments. So are universities producers or aggregators of knowledge? Do we have the infrastructure, both the technical and the soft infrastructure, to accommodate this kind of flexibility? When and how can universities get the financial return? And if this is the future of business schools, are we making the strategic decision to go in that direction? So now we will move to Dr. Kevin Bradford, Associate Professor of Marketing and Associate Dean for Undergraduate Studies at the Paul Mirage School of Business, University of California, and the current chair of the American Marketing Association. Kevin, we're delighted to have you here, and we're delighted to start our partnership as AUC with the American Marketing Association, hopefully with many more events to come. And let's look at how micro-credentials, when we look at the discipline and profession of marketing, how is that seen by the American Marketing Association? How is it practiced in the US? Kevin.
There we go. All right, and so I bring some interesting perspectives. As was mentioned, I am the chairman of the board for the American Marketing Association, and the American Marketing Association is 38,000 members in the United States, and one of the strategic directions that we're embarking on this year is to develop micro-credentialing. And so that's our growth area. We're going to kind of hang our hat on this initiative. And we're positioned well to do that. You know, we're an association, membership is strong. We have 3 communities: academic, professional community, as well as collegiate community. And it's, you know, it's well respected, but it's a difficult proposition we're going through. And it's a marketing problem within the marketing association, and we're up for this challenge. We're positioned as the kind of the knowledge bearer We create knowledge in the American Marketing Association. We have some of the top journals in the world. We accumulate this knowledge and we distribute this knowledge. And now we're embarking on doing it through micro-credentialing. And I look forward to this challenge in the upcoming years. But it's a marketing question that's kind of keeping us up at night, right? It's what's the right product and who are the right customers? And we're working that through. It's not an easy thing for us because we have such a broad spectrum of customers and stakeholders. I'm also the Associate Dean of the Undergraduate Business School at the University of California, Irvine. It's the 30th ranked business school in the United States. It's about the size of the school here. Top students, some of the best students in the country. Our students have been motivated to get good grades. And in order to get into our school, because so many people want to go there, we're able to just pick the best of the best. Unfortunately, that homogeneity around grades has forced us into dealing with students who are hyper-focused on getting good grades, and they're perhaps not as prepared to do the things that are necessary to get the most out of their degree. And so I'm also involved in implementing micro-credentialing at my university within the business school to take our students on a journey to acquire these skills, to get outside of the classroom, which they do anyway, but to guide them on career types of things and networking types of things and things to understand what it means to be a good college student, engaging in the university so that they get the most out of their degree. And this is a challenge. What we're trying to do is we're trying to create value for our students. It's a marketing issue. How do you create value for our students? They're getting good grades, however, they're not prepared for the marketplace. And so we're trying to use micro-credentialing because they're competitive and they want to see this through to guide them through the things that we think are best for them to get the most value out of their education. Prior to my career in academe, I worked for IBM. And IBM, I was in this role. It was a fantastic role. I called myself it was a client representative. And IBM, when I was there, I recognized that I had a learning orientation. And that's the type of person that has this lifelong commitment just to learning more. I just want to learn. Other people would be interested in, I got to get my numbers, I'd be interested in that, but I'd also be interested into why. What's really going on here? I'm solving problems, but what problems am I solving for my customer? And so my customer was Whirlpool. I was doing fantastically. I was a client representative, global account. It was a fantastic job, but they offered this opportunity to, because they wanted to keep good salespeople selling, they wanted to keep good people in their roles, they offered this opportunity to get these micro-credentials within the firm, and it would lead to more pay and more opportunities and these types of things. So I thought it was, so my involvement with micro-credentialing has been, it's vast, and so I'm in the implementation. I've been part of it. As a young person, I also, did micro-credentials for myself. My son does it as well. And that leads me to one of my first conclusions, and that is that this is really nothing new. Frankly, correspondence courses have been around in the United States since the 1880s. The University of Chicago was one of the first organizations to offer this. And, everyone has been interested over the years in retraining, upskilling, reskill, finding new ways, resetting yourself into new careers, preparing yourself for new roles within your career. It's really nothing new. However, what is new is how we deliver. It's the products, the challenge of creating the right products and getting the credibility for your products and these types of things. It's always been an issue in this space. I believe there's 300 in the United States. this market's worth about this training space in corporate and this upskilling and resetting. It's worth about $369 billion. And so this, but it's nothing new. What is new is the context, right, that we're in, and the excitement that's happening. And so what we have is a very competitive space now, and we have to understand what the competitors are offering. We have to understand the context, and in order to remain relevant in this area, there are marketing processes that you have to embrace. So it's always been around. The training in the workplace is just training itself is worth $169 billion. It is a place that's been around. Correspondence courses have been around. It's just something about it is very new. And if we sit on it, we're going to miss, major opportunities. And that leads me to another conclusion, and that is adaptive career behavior, which has been around for a while. It's becoming something that people have to embrace. I think firms are expecting it and are embracing it as you have to have these credentials in order to be promoted. You have to have these credentials in order to be with our company. If you're seeking these credentials, it will assist you in promotions and these types of things. And so there's this adaptive behavior, adaptive learning behavior that's occurring, and firms, organizations, education, we have to position ourselves to take advantage of it. And so there are these within the job adaptive behaviors. There's this personal growth adaptive behaviors. People just want to learn things that they're interested in. And there's this outplacement or reset adaptive behaviors. And these are all markets that we can position ourselves to take advantage of. But there's this huge caveat that we have to consider. There's a couple of things, a couple of caveats. And one is that this on-the-job training, this thing that we've embraced throughout all our lives, 70% of people learn best on the job. And then this 10% they learn by understanding what other people, how they're doing it, and see how they're doing it. And so this is something we have to contend with, right? Is it as valuable as we say it is? How long is it going to last? I'm not a naysayer. I truly believe in it. I believe in this lifelong learning. However, I'm in a country that doesn't have these major accreditation. There's some organizations that have this, and they've cultivated for many, many years. I know Harvard, as an example, is at the forefront of this probably in the world, but the rest of us, we're really struggling on accomplishing this. There's this other caveat that we have to contend with, and that is generative AI and the implications that might have on the accomplishment of these micro-credentials. I mean, we have to change the way these things are delivered. We have to change what they stand for. We have to understand that people are using them to accomplish things that they didn't do in the past. It's there, and if we don't embrace it, if we don't, we need to do it. Micro-credentialing is important, but we have to understand the context we're dealing with these days. So it's my last point really, and that is, when I think of micro-credentialing and where we are with it, I liken it to the things that keep the CEOs up at night, right? And so you ask yourself, what are they thinking about, right? And who are the customers, right? And so when you do micro-credentialing, who's that customer really going to be? You cannot do this effectively unless you have good customers, right? What's our product going to be? Who are our collaborators going to be? Do we build this ourselves? Do we build the infrastructure ourselves? Or do we work with somebody? In fact, should you start with the customer? Should you start with the customer and then build the product? That kind of collaboration. And so in closing, I'd just like to say that, these are marketing questions. Those who market this the best because it's been around for such a long time, are probably going to be the companies that survive and that do the best with this. And so understanding the processes that are necessary to add value to customers and build the best products are going to be the things that, that carry you to success. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Okay, I'm going to check very carefully if there's going to be applause in the other roundtables. This is very nice. So Kevin is again provoking us to think about the right product and who are the customers, how to deliver something that's been around and will remain around. Upskilling is here to stay. So how are we going to deliver it? How are we going to embrace the disruption of artificial intelligence? What keeps the CEOs up at night? So we're going to open up for discussion. I just want to make a note that I just received the message that the live streaming is working okay. Our dear friend Mary Betsy in Lebanon is streaming and watching us. So hello, Mary Betsy. We have a lot of expertise around the table. We have people from the shipping industry, the banking industry, the pharma industry, real estate, insurance, academics, and government. And this whole conversation is going to mean different things to these different industries. We might find some things in common, but we might find some specifics that pertain to specific industries. I don't normally put people on the spot, but Angelos, if I may start with you and your thoughts on micro-credentials in the area you work in. And I'd like to request that each speaker please introduce yourself, and for 2 or 3 minutes, just give us your thoughts on what this means for your industry.
So, hello everybody. My name is Angelos Pantouvakis. I'm coming from Greece. Actually, I heard that I'm representing the shipping industry. I have been working for the shipping for many years, and for the last 10 years for a university. I'm the Dean of Maritime and Industry in the University of Piraeus in Greece. I have 1 or 2 thoughts to share with you. I can say that I've heard with a lot of attention both Angus and Kevin. Actually, Kevin, my first degree is engineering, but then I have spent some years in marketing. So I will start from the customer. Micro-credentials, for whom? I can ask, for whom? Are micro-credentials the end of the university systems? Because sometimes I keep saying that when somebody takes a brick and then another brick, I just said it before, then he knows how to build a wall. Is it possible for the builder to become an engineer by collecting all those small bricks? When should those bricks, last micro-credentials, should start on the lifelong learning experience? Should we first provide for a bachelor degree and then for micro-credentials, or shall we start from micro-credentials and build a bachelor's degree? I'm a little bit concerned on that. And especially in shipping, where we have a lot of micro-credentials, I feel sometimes that the practitioner side will quickly overlap, not artificial intelligence, the practitioners will overlap the theorists. And sometimes theory is time-consuming, but protects. Without theory, sometimes the practice is dangerous. So my first actually thought is, when shall we start offering those micro-credentials? Then my second question, thought, concern is for whom and by whom? And who pays? In the United States, I have my son studying in Stern, just finished in the United States. He costs a huge amount. So the system was paid by somebody. Who pays for all those micro-credentials? And the administrative cost that Angus said, micro-credential of 20 hours or 30 hours, asynchronous, he said, not synchronous. Okay, you said asynchronous. That means that we put the videotape and somebody watches. And then maybe we collect some questions and we answer. And because we need to do it by, what is the name of artificial intelligence, the new package, AGTP? Yes. I'm a little bit, again, concerned because I tried to write down my speech today from my argument, and it was better than what I'm saying now. So first is when we start. Second is for whom, who pays, and the cost would be huge, actually. And if the one who pays is the industry, then that means that the customer is the industry, and that means that after 10 years, this would flag the end of any business school, because business schools, actually what they do, they try to produce knowledge for the industry, okay? I would actually like to stop here by, again, saying for whom, by whom, who pays, when it starts. Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Who would like to make a comment? Alfred?
Good morning. Thank you for having us today. This is a very challenging discussion, micro-credentials. When I first heard the term and read what you shared before coming here, I felt that it's still a developing thing, and the definition is not yet accurate about what's micro-credentials. So I think I developed my own definition of micro-credentials from our experience and our market. I am the CEO of an engineering and consultancy firm dealing with transport and logistics. If you allow me to put this definition, I think it's to bridge the gap between the quick development in our sectors and what we're seeing and the available skills of the human resources. I think we need to upskill them or to give them the knowledge and education that is needed to deal with what we're facing and the market is not ready for. We've developed very quickly in the past 8 years, and we found a huge gap in the skills needed and the available education, whether from business schools or other schools to that. And maybe micro-credentials can bridge this gap. Thank you.
Thank you, Alfred. And just building on some of the comments Angelos made and what you just mentioned, something we have noticed as executive education when we compare ourselves with our peers in the world, normally their revenue stream comes from corporate customized programs. In Egypt, in our case, the majority of our revenue stream comes from individuals who are paying for their own education in open enrollment programs to bridge the gap between how they were educated and what the job market needs. So this is a specificity in the Egyptian market that we are seeing that may be different about who pays what we're seeing. People are still investing to become more employable. Other comments, please.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Hiba Shabrawi. I'm the HR director of AstraZeneca Pharmaceuticals. I also come with shipping experience. I used to work for Maersk for many years, and I have a diversified commercial and HR experience. I'd like to start first with a study of Deloitte that we have actually read as an L&D team in AstraZeneca, and we have adopted. It says that the modern learner, regardless of the age, so we're not talking about how old the learner is, but it says that the modern learner is actually overwhelmed because they have requirements professionally and personally that are 41% more than the previous days. It says that the modern learner is distracted. They unlock their phones around 9 times on average every hour. It says as well that the modern learner is impatient. They watch a video and they decide in the first few seconds whether they want to continue or not. And if the video is more than 4 minutes, they will not even start watching it. So we realized that the learner is changing from how he or she used to be in the past. That's the first thing. Also, they have different needs. They want learning that is bite-sized. They want flexibility. They want to take control over their learning, so they don't want to follow a learning path that the company has provided for everyone. They want to pick and choose the things that they want to learn. They want the flexibility of choosing the time when they would learn, and they like to have blended learning, where they would not only learn from experts and managers, they would learn from peers as well. So for example, you go on Facebook and you find someone asking about keto diet. So what is it like, and what's your experience, and so on. Although he can go and ask a nutritionist, but people do like to get the experience of others. And based on that, based on the changing traits of the modern learner and the needs of the modern learner, I think educational institutions, together with the HR or L&D functions of the different companies and industries, they need to put that in perspective by providing short-sized, blended learning, people learn from each other, mix of online and classroom trainings, and so on. And for that, I think, now that I read about the micro-credentials, so I understand more about it, I think it's very, very much needed in today's business world. And if I would reflect on what is provided currently by the different educational institutions, whether I would say HR diplomas or marketing diplomas and so on, I think they lack focus. They lack specialism. It's more of too general, so it would fulfill the needs of, like we said, career starter. So someone who's like, I'm really interested to understand about HR. I would love to work in HR in any of the companies, so I take the HR diploma, so I understand more about different disciplines of HR. But as an employer, I wouldn't necessarily hire someone because he or she has an HR diploma, to be honest, because I would appreciate specialism more or experience more. So the current diplomas being provided and the certificates, they are not necessarily practical as they need to be, somehow theoretical, and they wouldn't necessarily cover the modern trends. So it would give you like the disciplines, which is important, of course, as a beginner to get to understand the general knowledge of marketing, the general knowledge of HR and. However, when it does not cover the up-to-date trends and practical experiences, this is where, as an employer, I would see it's good for you as a candidate that you have built this knowledge to start your career, but it wouldn't necessarily add to me. And having said that, I think what we have been discussing about the micro-credentials is definitely spot on when it comes to what employers need, given that it's short, it is blended, so it is provided online, which will provide the flexibility, yet it's important also to have some live sessions, because I also find that things that are totally online, it holds some detachment. Ideally, I prefer to, personally as a learner myself, I prefer to have something that is online, so it provides me the flexibility, yet we can get to meet once a month, yes. So we discuss the learnings and reflect together, rather than talking to myself, you know, and reading by myself all the time. Also, I think if we can develop micro-credentials to be industry-related, that would be even better and better, you know, and higher. So it can start first by profession, specific learnings by profession, like when I say someone in HR wants to learn more about data analytics. So it's like very, very focused and specific. And if you can get to industry specific as well, so shipping specific, pharma specific.
Thank you very much, Hiba. And as you were talking, I could see the eyes of our program managers in HR and marketing, and I think they're going to catch you after the meeting to tell you what is new and trending in there. I know, so I just have to acknowledge this. They're sitting in front of me. So you will get a briefing on the new programs in HR and marketing and how updated they are at AUC. But you raise an important point. And I think you raise the distinction between what the individual is getting out of the training and what the organization is getting out of it. And those don't necessarily always align. And it's important to be explicit about this and to see what we are catering for. And also it's important to look at even the bite size, the blended, the quick, the whatever. At some point, the learner needs a step back and reflection. What does this mean for me? What is happening in my own development? And this reflection part is what is part of the experiential learning cycle that we try to provide. So it's not either or, as far as I can see, but I think all the points you raised are very important to be included in the thought process of developing a program. Thank you. Sharif, tafadhal.
Let me just pick on some of the things that have already been said, starting with Angus. Indeed, micro-credential is the new buzzword, and we come up with those buzzwords, and I think how we see it and the definition today is still scratching the surface. It's still, let's say, classical. We did not get into the nitty-gritty details of where this is taking us. Moving to Angelus, you raise a very interesting question. Is this the start of the end of the university system? And we've just heard that 2 months ago with ChatGPT as well. So is this the start of the end of how we can assess students and how we even can judge faculty, whether they wrote a piece of research or they just sort of asked ChatGPT? And again, ChatGPT itself is still scratching the surface of what machine language and AI can offer. But all this revolves around technology. And it's the accelerated disruption that maybe took us to the next level because of the pandemic, but it was there for 40 years. But the level and speed of acceleration just is going through the roof. Our conversation today could go 2 ways. One that some of you alluded to, which is what it represents, micro-credentials to academic institutions in terms of revenue stream. Of course, that's a fantastic opening, versus the knowledge part of it. Let me just in 1 minute address, I'll drop the first one. I'll focus more on the knowledge part. And I think these several key points we need to address. First, instead of going, is this the end of universities? And maybe it is this the end of how we appreciate degree programs? So I'm a graduate of blah, 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 versus I have a skill set can help me work for the pharmaceutical industry or for shipping or for what have you. That's a key question we need to ask. The second, the source and form of knowledge. We're going into the direction of, instead of having a one-to-many, but it's a conversation that you can get in a classroom, with your peers, outside the classroom. WhatsApp, right? WhatsApp sounds ridiculous, but it's true, as a source of knowledge. And of course, we're going into the direction of there is no one-size-fits-all, that's for sure. It's more personalization, more customization, because each and every one of us, if I ask the question today in this room, we will never get to identical wish lists if we pick and choose from micro-credentials programs. The importance of the knowledge that we get through our peers. And hence comes the technology that we're using today, and we undermine the amount of knowledge that we receive, and that in itself contributes to our knowledge, whether implicit or explicit, that's irrelevant. The last point, this conversation, I actually relate it to from the employer side, it's impacting the future of work. Because the future of learning, because we dropped that part, we always focus on the future of work, but the future of learning will impact surely the hybrid model, the 20, 80, 60, 40, whatever, of how organization will set up their staff or their structure, and whoever who's granting degrees or capacities or programs will have to cater to those programs. These are too many questions, and I promise you I don't have the answer of any of them. But this is the conversation that we use the terms, but we did not get into the sort of where it's taking us. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharif. Abir?
Okay. My name is Abir Lhita. I'm the CEO of EGTrans. It is a freight forwarding and project logistics company here in Egypt. I just think that this conversation is extremely interesting for me from the point of view of a potentially corporate customer looking at what micro-credentials could offer for us as a company. And I think that maybe this has been around for a while, but it's becoming more and more important. And I think it's very challenging because if you've been speaking of drawing that journey for the individual learner, what does the journey look like for the corporate customer? It seems to me that there's going to be a very overabundant and confusing wealth of choices. So many different institutions providing these micro credentials on so many different subjects. How do you actually see what is the best investment of your employees' time, of the company's money? How do you relate that? I had a conversation this morning with Angelos that was really very interesting point he said is how do you tie these different pieces of education to the actual KPIs, to the bottom line results, so that it's very different from saying I'm going to support my employees to get their MBA. Then it's a once and done kind of decision versus I have these 100 bricks that Angelos was speaking about, and how do I not only build that person's wall, but then actually create an entire structure that comes together. I have a couple of questions I really don't have answers to. How do these micro-credentials, if they're a purely online thing, a part of training is always not just the theoretical, but the interaction aspect between the different trainees in a single place, and then using practical application. I mean, actually doing some exercises and things to apply those thoughts during the training. But if each person is doing it as an individual, is that aspect lost, or is there still a way to make that there? And my other question is there an application of that to the more technical vocational side of things, or is it a purely soft skills type of offering? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Abir. Yes, I think you may have some insights for us. Please introduce yourself.
Hey, everyone. I'm Devesh Mehta. I'm the Regional Director for Harvard Business School Publishing, managing Middle East, North Africa, and South Asia region, where we work with the academic institutions and all the new age ed tech players in the region. Micro-credentials is definitely, I think, one of the most competitive landscape as we're looking at, because now in the play, it's not just universities or schools. There are ed tech players. There are tech players like Amazon, Googles of the world who are also playing in the same field. So definitely the end gainer is the learner, the students or the executives. They have a plethora of options to choose from. But from a university point of view, we have seen few trends, having worked with a lot of institutions in the region, and some of the insights from HBS as well. Definitely when a learner is looking for a micro-credential, he or she is looking for a more practical bite size in nature, like the skills that the learner can learn and implement in a real time. The person is not looking for something theoretical or the framework point of view, something experiential in nature. So the pedagogical style that we're using, the use of experiential learning is definitely the key, which student can implement in a real-time manner. Secondly, from the university point of view, I think being very agile and nimble, that's something is very, very important because you can't be married to a particular course or a subject. Changing as the industry demand changes. I think some of it, EdTech players have been really smart in doing that, but similarly for universities as well, we could be very agile and nimble about which courses to offer, which to remove also. I think that's something will really keep them up to the pace. And thirdly, I think the mode of these micro-credentials, how we are offering, I think you have asked this, is it an online is a solution or an in-person is a solution? Sometimes you've seen like in a hybrid mode, it not only increases the scale, but it also makes it inclusive. Like since last few years when HBS started the online AMP program, we saw an increase by 25% in the women enrollment. So definitely it makes it more inclusive and accessible for all the wider audiences. But that's a space, the niche a university or a player needs to identify. And then price point, which price point we want to play at, how we want to position the product and offering, and which target audience we want to capture as a niche. We can't be one player for everything, but identifying that niche, I think, plays a very important part because the market is huge, it's highly competitive, but still if you're able to be like an expert, for instance, in sustainability, anything and everything on sustainability comes to you. I think that's a identifying those niche and special areas can really set you up for success. So yeah, I think these were the few aspects, I think, putting in the framework of 4 Ps, like I think hearing from Kevin's address, I think product, price, place, promotion, I think identifying and placing it from that lens, from the learner point of view, because the learner is at the center. I think that can really change the future, how universities play in the field of micro-credential and make them more competitive. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think, I mean, both you and Abir have alluded to this. What do we do when there is so much choice? And maybe one of the things we think about is that, is it the credibility of the traditional training providers who extend into this space or the corporates? And it's the credibility of the provider that you're betting on as the whole area of micro-credentials matures further. Angus and then Gina.
This is a great conversation, really enjoying it. And listening to a number of conversations, I'm reminded, particularly Sheriff's comment, I'm reminded of Mark Twain. Reports of my death have been slightly exaggerated. And I can't help feeling reports of the death of the university have been slightly exaggerated, but because universities over the longer term have been remarkably good at reinventing themselves. Think of Germany in the 19th century and effectively the reinvention of the university. I think we're at that stage again now where we actually need to reinvent the university. And I see a number of themes that have been talked about here as being a central place for the future of the university. And I'll start with being an aggregator of content. Heba, Abir, all correctly were pointing out that there's knowledge in industry. There is really contemporary knowledge. What is needed is that contemporary knowledge. We know that the academic process temporally, i.e. over time, filters that knowledge. How do we bring that contemporary practical knowledge in? It's bringing it in from outside, but it's looking at it through a lens. It's looking at it through a lens of expertise that an executive education team within a business school, within a university will have. So this notion of the university becoming a place where it aggregates knowledge, I think, is the first theme I'd stress. Second theme I'd stress is the idea of the university, the business school, as a learning advisor. A couple of comments where, well, there's a hell of a lot of stuff out there. Do we know whether it's any good? How do we string it together into developing the skills that we need as individuals, the skills that our employers want? I think there's a role there for universities working alongside corporate HR departments in terms of framing what a learning journey looks like, so a learning advisor function. And the last one, and I really feel remiss of not having actually raised it in the first point, is being a facilitator of peer-to-peer learning. The reason I say I feel remiss about it is one of the great strengths of the development programs I was responsible for at Lancaster University was creating the peer learning networks, particularly amongst SMEs, in other words, organizations that could otherwise be quite isolated. And that peer-to-peer learning was absolutely critical. So I think the future role of the university in this territory is not about trying to compete necessarily on knowledge production, but actually recognizing the different types of knowledge that are out there, how it can most effectively be brought together, be a learning advisor for individual learners, but arguably also learning partners with corporate HR departments in terms of bundling these together and creating the space for peer facilitation, peer learning. And I'll just end with the point, when the pandemic struck and I was at Lancaster and all our SME development programs were anchored around peer learning, it was one of those holy ... moments. What do we do when we can't actually have people meeting face to face and we had to go online? Well, guess what? The peer-to-peer learning worked remarkably well synchronously online. We have made a step change in the way in which we engage with people, particularly if they've had an initial meeting. So I think death of the university has been exaggerated. I think we've got to go back and ask what we were always here for, which was providing knowledge to whatever the dominant part of the economy was. So if you want to go back to the original universities, Bologna, Cambridge, Oxford, take your pick, it was providing learning for the clergy, which were the dominant part of society, in the same way as business is a dominant part of society today.
Thank you very much, Angus. Dina.
Thank you very much. I'll very quickly introduce myself. I'm Dina Abdel Fattah. I'm Assistant Professor of Economics, and even though I deal with undergraduate students, but I think the discussion here is very enlightening on so many areas. So as a start, I think we are producing today's graduates who are going to be tomorrow's future learners, who are going to continue to learn. And what we are doing in the undergraduate programs is to continue to prepare them to be the future learners and to benefit from identifying what the very dynamic market is actually looking for. We are looking at a job market or the future of jobs and the future of work that is very dynamic, and the undergraduate programs are not able to keep the pace of the changing skill demand in the future of work or in the future labor markets. And I think in today's world, we are moving towards translating learning outcomes within programs or looking at interdisciplinarity of programs, not from a learning outcomes perspective, but more so from a skills perspective. So for every course that I'm taking, for every program that I'm signing up for, what skills is it going to provide me with? So when we keep saying upskilling and reskilling, I just want to give it the background of it. What kind of skilling are we providing our undergraduate students so we are preparing them for a world where they are ready to be reskilled or upskilled? So I think within our programs, the collaboration with the industry and sending our students to deal with the industry or to get exposed to what the different industries are looking for is actually very enlightening, and this could open the door for the significance of micro-credentials for undergraduate students as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dina. Mahmoud, and then Amr.
Okay. My name is Mahmoud Alam. I'm the former and founding president of the Knowledge Hub Universities. I also co-founded another universities some years back. In between, I was actually the Associate Dean for Executive Education in the School of Sciences and Engineering here at AUC. So I'm talking from a university perspective. And here I'm going to go back to a comment by Sharif and another one by Angus, which relates to the role of universities in offering micro-credentials or lifelong learning. Sharif mentioned or asked, is it the end of the universities as we know? Angus kind of answered that. We're looking at actually a revolution about the educational system is going to go through a revolution. We've seen lots of changes in well-established system in other ways of life, and I think education is on the way. So redefining what education is all about is what's going to happen the next few years. That's what I feel. So maybe the idea of earning degrees like a bachelor degree, a master's degree, we need to redefine that. Take another look at what is a bachelor degree, what is a master's degree, maybe come up with new ideas, new concepts. That would take into consideration what we are witnessing now. The bite-sized learning, the short courses, the focused courses that all youngsters are looking at, even at the level of undergraduate. Let me say that some of university students that I've known have decided not to earn a bachelor degree, and instead they're going for a bunch of micro-credentials to prepare them for the job market. So it started. Okay, if we go back to thinking about the educational system as it stands with a bachelor degree, master's degree, and so on, then the problems will be what Angus mentioned, the stackability. That would be a big challenge. Portability, which requires accreditation, of course, quality assurance mechanisms that are not yet in place. Maybe Ireland is on the way, but there is a lot that needs to be done in that area. Also updatability, traceability, and validity. Some of the areas, like cybersecurity. If you earn a micro-credential in cybersecurity today, it's going to be obsolete in a couple of years, or maybe a couple of months. So there are so many challenges in how to look at the future of micro-credential, whether it's going to replace existing educational systems or not. Thank you.
Very much, Mahmoud. Amr?
Thank you, Reda. From the practical side, I'm the founder and CEO of Ipsos, Egypt, and currently I'm the Vice President of Avid Beam Technology in the field of artificial intelligence, computer vision. Academically, I'm honored to be faculty at the AUC. I think some of us are aware already that there are a lot of papers and theories have been published in relation to the threat that is faced by two institutions, the top two institutions faced by the threat of this, what we call revolution, disruption, whatever, banks and universities. So this is a fact. It's not about subjective opinion of some people and others and so on. So it's agreed upon, but what is really subjective is how bad is bad, or how to face it from one side or the other. When it comes to universities, yes, I fully agree. From the marketing perspective, the product that we are selling is knowledge. But if we go back, we always had progression, but now we're talking about disruption because the progression is accelerating and so on. But prior to that, what was the source of this disruption or progression? Actually, it was universities, not corporations. Meaning that we had a lot of marketing theories that were developed at universities that disrupted corporations. So universities were always on top of things. They were ahead 2 steps, whereby they come up with the ideas, and the ideas are adopted by corporations and companies. So the source of disruption and progress comes actually from the research and from the ideas that come from the universities adopted by corporations. So they assess the future needs, the latent need of corporations, and they come up with a knowledge solution to it. Or even a different work methodology, so they prepare the knowledge that is adequate to implement those new progressive ideas. But now, actually, what happened is that the corporate side is 5 steps ahead of universities. So that's the problem, actually. I don't mind if you call it micro-credentials, if you call it nano-degree, if you call it whatever. But at the end of the day, what's the root cause? So the challenge here is not about introducing micro-credentials or not. It's not about nano-degrees or not. It's about our ability as university to transform, like banks, because banks also are very much threatened because the cause for their existence might not be there in a very short while. So for us as universities, how can we regain momentum and become ahead 2 steps from the corporate and become the source of disruption instead of waiting for the corporates to disrupt and then we react? That's my point of view.
Thank you very much, Amr. Hanan?
Good morning. My name is Hanan Musalhi, HR Director for Hassan Alem Properties. Before that, I'm not only real estate, but also I've worked in telecoms, FMCGs, and so on. So the micro-credentials is, for me, and looking at it from an HR perspective, a new tool to retain talent. Right now, especially in Egypt, we're facing a couple of challenges. Gen Z, it's a very easy decision to leave, not necessarily for financial reasons, but mainly for learning and development and exposure reasons. We're competing in a very tiny talent market. So micro-credentials is a solution that is more sophisticated than the regular training sessions that are given through regular training providers, and less sophisticated than the executive MBA and the MBA. And then I can see it a very good tool to retain a larger category of employees who are in the mid-management, Gen Zs, a bit younger, a bit older, the modern learner, if you can call, because it's bite-sized. I expect it to be diversified. Of course, there is the role here of the HR to direct that learning to focus on skill gaps and so on, but it's an excellent, for me, it's an excellent solution to add an extra tool to retain staff through getting value, not necessarily financial, but it's learning. And I do believe that learning is a very important value for a lot of people, especially here in the job market I'm working in. From a financial perspective, it's either, that's to address the question, how is it paid for? It can be a shared cost between the company and the employee, or something that is granted by the employee, but it is an interesting tool. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hanan. Maha and then Sharif.
Hello, I'm Maha Murad. I'm the Associate Dean for Undergraduate Studies Business School, AUC. I totally agree with all the views. It's actually a revolution. But let me just tackle the undergraduate students, as Kevin was mentioning in the beginning, because at the title of this session, it should be a lifelong learning process. It's not only a matter of taking a course and that's it. So to change the culture, it's extremely challenging. Students are the same everywhere, as you mentioned. They are grade-oriented, especially when it comes to the undergraduates. So when you start convincing them to take courses or to go for micro-credential, it's not that easy. And that's why it's required a lot of effort from a university side as well as from the labor market side. As a university, we can offer the course, we can encourage the students to take the course, even we can integrate it within a credit course, but on the same time, when the labor market asks about this in the interviews and in the CV, this will add a lot of value, because the word value is extremely important from a student point of view. They don't want to waste their time, honestly. I'm talking from an undergraduate perspective. They want to do whatever for grades, and this is their aim, and even when you convince them or try to convince them for any extracurricular activities, they are asking about the value and the impact. The environment is changing, because if you look at the extracurricular activity, for example, a lot of students are looking for this, because now when it's come to the interview, employers are start looking at the CV and highlighting or asking what was your extracurricular activities. So it's automatically reflected on the demand from a student's point of view. If you do the same when it's come to micro-credential, definitely it will be reflected on the demand as well. So this is the equation. It should be two-sided, from a university effort as well as demand from the labor market. Thank you.
Very much, Maha. And again, this adds to the point of how micro-credentials can add to the speed of how different areas of learning are progressing, and also leveling the playing field for people who have not had the chance to get that in their formal education. Sharifa and then Hisham.
Okay, thank you. A very interesting conversation. My name is Sharifa Sharif. I'm academia also, a professor of public administration, Cairo University, and currently the executive director of the National Institute for Governance and Sustainable Development. So I'm talking through the government lens, which is very complicated. According to our latest numbers, we're talking about 3.5 million civil servants to date. which again brings us to the idea how you customize, how you train all these, looking at a lifelong learning process for them, succession and so forth. I thought we've been working, of course, with AUC on several very successful programs and flagship programs that we're very honored to be working together with the business department and also with GAP. But again, the idea of, I think, let me look in the through the lens of academia, bridging the gap between, of course, traditional qualifications and the labor market is very important. We're very late on doing this, very late. We've been talking about it for forever, but it never really happened on the ground. So I think this is number one. Micro-credentials, in my opinion, will not replace the traditional qualifications. We should look at it as stackability, again, in the stackability perspective. We're stacking on the knowledge already gained. When we look at micro-credentials, I think it's very important to look at it in two perspectives, the learner-centered and, of course, customer. Training needs assessment. We have to always look at sectoral, what the sector needs, what the organization needs. Personalization is very important. Customization, again, customization is incredibly important if we're talking about not just for government, but for any organization, any sector. I think the most important, again, linking KPIs and the bottom line is very important with the training plan of any organization, of course. When we look at through the government lens, let me move to the government lens side. Of course, we've been working on investing in human capital for at least 4 or 5 years incredibly, and we're trying to do it incredibly quickly because, of course, new administrative capital. But again, catering to 3.5 million is very difficult, so we're trying to kind of pilot or where we worked on 50,000, of course, for the new administrative capital. But we're looking in the perspective of not just lifelong learning, we're talking about a shift in mindset. So the shift in mindset is very important when we look at also micro-credentials, looking at the mindset itself and shifting because of the ever-evolving and very fast-changing world that we're living in. So that's my take. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Sharifa. And before I move on, I just want to make a comment as an executive education training provider. When customers talk to us about return on investment of training, calculate the cost of ignorance. So the investment in training does not always reflect in the bottom line immediately and explicitly. So we need to agree on the KPIs, what kind of return on investment we can talk about, rather than look at how training will impact the bottom line immediately.
Good morning, all. I would like to thank you for this fruitful discussion. Let me talk about the real estate industry. I'm the HR director of ACAM Development. The market have been changed rapidly the last 5 years. And let's imagine that the new capital have only more than 200 developers. So the competition is now growing so fast. Two main points my colleagues talked about, the impact of the new methodologies of learning, the modern learner, how the learner now changed his behavior, and the talent acquisition and retention. These two main points have been affected by the development methodologies and the training plans we have to apply in our corporates. We have three main arms in the real estate industries: the developer, the brokerage companies, and the construction arm. So our people have to broaden their knowledge, trying to deal with different kind of business
colleagues and managers and whatsoever, we have more than 90% of our people between the age of 25 to 35, and that imply the learning and development of our people to be approached differently than before. In my opinion, the micro-credentials will not replace the academia. Let me take an example from the real case life of our company. We have an employee with a PhD degree in his discipline, and then his manager recommended him for a promotion from manager to director, the promotion from a manager to director. And then when it comes to assessment, the employee have a lack of managerial skills. So he is mastering his discipline, but he lacks the essentials of directing people. So this will not replace this. I mean the academia is very essential to have the proper knowledge of the discipline, and the methodologies like the micro-credentials is very essential to have a focused or tailored learning need that impact on the people.
Thank you very much. And for your employee with a PhD, may I recommend our advanced management program? Mahasmail, there's my sales pitch. And Fedi.
Thank you. My name is Fedi Moros. I'm the Assistant Provost for Innovative Learning Experiences at AUC. I wanted to make a comment that many of the guests and colleagues' comments dealt with the human element in the learning experience, whether it's the learner behavior or employee behavior. So Angus talked about 25% of the people who start the program, only 25% finish their MBA. Heba talked about the modern learner and the qualification or the behavior that they exhibit and the needs that they exhibit. Kevin raised the question, are we designing the right product? And whether we should start with the customers first. And I think this is an essential point that maybe the current education system misses. The universities have had the attitude of build it and they will come. So we design, we feel that we have the knowledge and we design programs and people sign up for the knowledge, and this needs to change. We really need, I think, as we design the future of lifelong learning, and this is an opportunity because it wasn't there before. I know there is, professional development in companies and such, but universities didn't have that role very explicit. So I think this is a good opportunity where we can design from scratch and focus on the personas that we're designing for. I think Angus mentioned, whether it's career starters, career developers, or career shifters, these are three different personas, and they're not just also three personas. They might be different depending on the organization. Because we also talked about companies have different corporate learning systems. So each company might have their own needs, their own culture. As Heba also mentioned, the personalization or the specificity of the programs and such. So it's not just that we need to invest in designing learners' personas, but we also need to invest in designing organizational personas, kind of, to understand which learner in which organization. So this is going to take a little bit, it's not really machine learning, it's not really AI, but find patterns in the learner personas in combination with the different organizations and what are the needs for that. So I think universities need to, or we, and being a faculty member, so we need to move away from build it and they will come to understand them first, build for them, and then they will definitely come. And I think the bite-size stackability features of micro-credentials are very promising to personalizing the lifelong learning experience. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this, Fadi. And again, going back to something that Angus mentioned in the beginning about universities investing in the soft part of managing these kinds of things, and especially traditional universities with siloed departments, siloed majors, to look at the transferability between executive education and academic degrees. This is something that still needs to be part of the culture of the internal flexibility to enable us to be able to offer this to the market. So hint, hint for what we need from the provost office. Any additional comments? Yes, please.
Thank you so much. I am Hussam Abbani, the Executive Director for Engineering and Science Services, AUC. While thinking about micro-credentials, I felt that I don't want to think about legitimizing the micro-credentials. Which means that why micro-credentials, what is micro-credentials? I thought that we need to think how to use it because it's already there. So utilizing micro-credentials, I would like to solve problems that already corporates are facing now, which is the spike that happens after the learning journey. After the learning journey or the knowledge that acquired by employees, they lose around 80% by time. So we can use the micro-credentials because it's bite-sized learning frequently by already a plan set in order to keep and maintain and sustain the already acquired knowledge throughout the years of employment to avoid the loss of knowledge that may affect the performance that lead to loss in business. So since it's already there, we should think how to use it and how to utilize it in a way to avoid all such negatives from the micro-credentials and how it will affect the ego of the education and learning. So let's think it's a tool, so we need to use it and may help businesses to retain their knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hossein. Any further comments? Yes, please.
Good morning, all. Thank you very much for this interactive discussion. I'm George Nashed, and I'm working as HR Director for Orascom Construction. I think micro-credential is not, I don't want to call a micro-credential as a word standing alone, but it's not a terminology, but it's a bet to help the Egyptian educational system, because we are having a very huge lack in the Egyptian education system and the labor demand and market needs as well. So I think Egyptian universities should look seriously into their curriculum to inject some of the basic skills that needed in current market demands. This is very important, especially in the fast and rapid race of market change now. We are now facing a very rapid change. I'll be talking from employer perspective in the transportation sector. Egypt now is going very fast in creating some of very high skilled jobs in transportation sectors. We are building and maintaining the high-speed train. We are building and establishing the monorail that will be opened after maybe a couple of months. Yes, it's ours. Okay, we have established the light rail system as well. So you imagine that who will operate this? We all imagine who will be the drivers that will maintain this. How can we keep this system running for safety issues as well? How can I go and go from one side to the other and go safely back to my home? So we are lacking a lot of skills in there. What we are doing right now, I will be talking from employer perspective, that we are trying to have quick bites, if we can rephrase this as a quick bites of learning for our people, to have them equipped to face the current challenges that we are facing in the market. It might be pillars, it might be specific modules for the white collars and for the blue collars as well. because the blue collars are very important, and we are focusing now on the vocational training, which is very important. And I think most of entities, especially from Germany, I think Alfred knows this because we are engaged in multiple projects together with GIZ and ACA and some of the German entities. We are building schools now for vocational training, having the German dual system. And this is very important to have, after a while, the people that we need to fulfill the current gaps in the market demands. And this will reflect and impact also our people, because they will, after a while, they will transfer the knowledge to other people within the place. So it's very important for universities, for employers to work seriously, collaboratively, to have this in place. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. But one of the issues that we sometimes face as providers is that if there is a specific need from a company like that, and we know what it would take to develop the training that is required, then the cost becomes an issue. So corporates want to get that kind of service, but many times they're not willing to pay what it takes to offer it in the way that is needed. And this is a conversation that needs to happen. How can we offer what you need at the price point that you're willing to pay, and be able to do that quickly enough to meet your changing needs as you develop? That equation is a challenge that we sometimes face.
Hello everyone, my name is Ibrahim Hamid. I am the head of learning and culture in Bank Masr. I have a huge challenge. I have 22,000 employees to develop for the future, from a bureaucratic government organization that has been there for 100 years into the future. So, I mean, so I start with the learning, because this is what we're talking about today, the micro-credentials and the lifelong learning. We do, of course, have the challenge that we have, the show must go on, right? Business continuity. I cannot get people out of their work for a long time. And therefore, learning a maximum training days per year has to be identified based on the training needs. I think we are in a digital world led by technology companies, and they taught us something. They didn't only come with technology, they came with a culture. And this culture is agile culture. Basically, the software engineer and people who are in telecom, they understand agility very well, and they know it is the key to understand your customer and change your processes, your tools to match your customer needs and the ever-changing market demands. And therefore, we as bankers, we did not get that yet. That's a problem, because we are in a process of digital transformation. I need to understand how tech people work, what's their language, translate it to bankers, and be able to catch up with their speed. So this challenge makes me, even virtual learning is not enough for us. When I offer my branch team virtual learning, they have to get out of the branch still to take that learning. They can't do it during the working hours, and they finish work maybe by 7 or 8 p.m. And by the time they get home, what do you expect them to learn? Even on weekends, sometimes most of them work. So the challenge even cannot be solved by virtual program. It has to be solved by project-based learning that is accredited by university, which requires a lot of partnerships, a lot of collaboration, a lot of agility inside the organization and with their learning providers. Having said that, I see the challenges in culture, and the challenges in culture even impact what I'm offering in learning. So people has to own their development, and that's something we try to boost. We will not give you the learning, you have to find it. And we have to be also highly aligned with business, that whatever the agenda of 2023 and 24, I have to be ready to offer the right skill set for these projects to happen. So what I'm saying is we just have to be faster, talk more, communicate a lot more, and be as agile as we can in micro-credentials. Not the content, but offering the methodology of accreditation and, giving it in the right time so people can apply. If I'm taking credentials, if I'm taking certificates and I'm not applying these certificates, no matter what we do, the knowledge retention will be very low. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And yes, تفضل.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Marwa Hassan. I'm replacing Yasmin Wahid today. I'm the head of development and talent management at AG Bank. First, I would like to thank you all for all the input. I agree with all of what has been discussed. I just have a comment on a question Dr. Ghada raised, which is when you visited your revenue streams, you found out that it's mostly coming from the people, not the corporates or the employer himself. And I need to ask, why is that? I think the value of micro-credentials is perceived by the people themselves, not by the business yet. And by the business here, I don't refer to the learning people. It's not the HR or the learning. As an HR recruiting a new candidate, yes, I can see that this person at least has learning agility, has goal-oriented, he or she are focused on pursuing a specific career, and they are taking the steps. However, when you start discussing this with the line manager, the one who is going to work with this person, they don't see this importance. What they want to see is a specific skill set or a proven track record that says that this person can do A and B and C. And in this area, I would like to give a very small example that happened in our bank. We usually don't go for learning credentials except when they are customized for us. And we do that. Why we do that? Because we supplement the learning taken by the provider, either AUC or any other provider, and we supplement it with assignments, project-based, and sometimes specific coaches to be able to bring or cover the gap that takes place from receiving the learning in the class and after that trying to apply it at work. When they start applying at work, there is usually something missing. And this missing step, which we identify in the learning field as moving the person from applying the learning to having an impact for that learning. Another thing in here is that for the new generation and the young people, I noticed that most of the comments were talking about the methodology based on having a blended solution. Although I agree that blended solutions are very important, but I think that while designing the micro-credentials, part of the design itself should be focused more on the practice and the peer learning, either through classroom or virtual. In this respect, virtual or classroom will not be the real breaker. It's what I'm going to learn in this part, how I'm going to apply. That's my point of view. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and very, very important insights. Just in the interest of time, I'm going to ask my co-chair, Mohammed Kaseba, to give us a wrap-up and summary of the conversation, and then Angus, Kevin, and Sharif, if you have any final comments after that.
Thank you, Dr. Ghada. It's very interesting to be the co-chair after all what was mentioned, to summarize more questions than answers. I think we live in the age of urgency. When we talk about the age of the digital age was there since the 1980s. So the number of discussions that we sit in and we listen to, the word this and that has been or is being redefined as, I think, more so than less in the discussions that we are in. Future of work, the metaverse, and now the micro-credentials. All these topics are topics of redefining the business that we are in. So I'm gonna try to summarize what has been said, using a bit of a cliche which is the word innovate or die. I think it is now more than ever that we need to look at this as a must. And when we say innovate, thank you. And when we say innovate, it's not in the product, it's not in the programs that we're offering only, it's in the entire business model. So out of what has been mentioned today, we have 4 questions that we need to answer, which is, who is the customer that we are after? And here we need to understand the clear grouping of those customers between career setters, career shifters, and professionals who are reskilling or upskilling. The modern learner, like Heba mentioned, with all their behavioral requirements, as well as the corporate clients and their specific needs, as we've heard in many points. The second question will be about the value proposition. What are we offering them? What are we offering these customers? So practically, we talked about designing the journey itself. We talked about aligning the corporate, as a corporate client, we're aligning the corporate learning systems, aligning with their corporate learning systems. And the level of customization, which could be a blend of our current programs and micro-credentials, so it can be a point on top of what we have today. The third part, or the third question that we need to answer is, how do we create this value, which is practically the value chain? And Angus talked about things like investing in our back end and our operational infrastructure, our technologies. Kevin talked about marketing. How do we market and how do we deliver such programs or such products to the market that we are in? And the last and final question will be around the revenue model, which is, how do we price this? How do we make money out of it? I had an agreement with Kevin yesterday that he did not stick to, not to mention the $169 billion in front of Dr. Sharif, so that our targets do not get affected. But revenues is a big part, and the questions of who will pay for that, whether it's the industry or the individual themselves, or a blend of both. This is the fourth thing that we need to think of. So, who's our customers? What's the value that we're giving them? How do we create this value? And how do we make money out of it? That's in summary what we've been talking about. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Angus, and final thoughts?
Thank you. Sorry, that would help. 3 words that have stood out for me from the conversation. Personas. It's around tailoring. It's around tailoring to individuals. It's around tailoring to corporates. There's a whole set of implications for universities flow from that. Second word is agility. Agility in universities. Not normally 2 words you put in the same sentence, but arguably we're going to have to move there. It's a fundamental overhaul of the university. And the third one is integration, and that's integration of learning into work, because that was a very astute point made about the load on staff, and as well as the pure practicality, the need for practical learning. And for us, how do we accredit experiential learning? So lots of challenges for the university, but a great discussion. I've learned a huge amount. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much. Kevin?
I'm in the same boat. I just feel like there's a lot more questions now than answers. You know, one of the things that jumped out to me is that there's this assumption that we can do this effectively across all of these institutions and businesses, and it's not. This isn't an easy undertaking. It's a moving target. It's complicated. It is direct competition with existing companies. We have academic institutions that have been around for hundreds of years who are trying to do this, and you have upstarts who are doing it quite effectively. It's a fertile ground, but you know, I'm just not certain if we have all the answers in this space. And so one of the things that popped up to me as well is, especially when we're talking about the relevance of the university going into the future, and the threat from micro-credentialing. You know, I just, I feel like we need to think of training, you know, I look at it as the difference between training and education, and the university is this bedrock of providing this, you know, this fundamental, this foundational education that I don't think that micro-credentialing is designed to deliver. I do think that micro-credentialing is there for training, and training on specific, you know, specific needs of companies and specific needs of universities, and I think it's going to be very valuable. And so I like the idea of stackable. There's this, I think the foundation is the university, and then stackable on top of that are these micro-credentials, and it's going to be a rush to get there, and I know we're headed there.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Sharif?
Well, I always believe whenever we have a conversation and we end up with more questions than we started off with, then we're heading in the right direction. But surely this is a conversation that will not stop today, and we look forward to a continued conversation with all of you. Having said that, I think this is yet again another journey that we need to keep on transforming ourselves. When I say ourselves, I mean academic institutions. Work closer with industry and business. Be adaptive for one thing, just to remain relevant. Otherwise, we'll be sort of tracking off in a different direction. And I love the fact that, I think it was Mahmoud that he said we need to move faster. Of course we need to move faster. But you guys know the DNA of academic institutions does not really help in that regard. And I'm looking at Angus and Kevin and Angelus. Academic institutions move really slow, but with your support, actually, we can actually accelerate. Thank you very much for a wonderful conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharif. And before the clapping, if academic institutions move slow, executive education academic institutions moves fast. So we are here to serve. Thank you all very, very much for this conversation.
Hi, everyone. Can we please go to the stage for a group photo? Everyone, can you please go to the stage for a group photo?